Imagine a place where life itself revolves around the gentle yet powerful rhythm of a river. A community skilled in its currents, sustained by its bounty, living in harmony with nature. Now picture that same river, that very lifeline, becoming an insurmountable barrier when it comes to the most fundamental human dignity, laying a loved one to rest. It's a really stark and honestly heartbreaking contrast. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the lush, mist-shrouded hills of Karnataka, a state in southwest India. Specifically, we're focusing on a small but profoundly significant place called Manasuru Ravuru Camp. It's nestled within the Chikamagaluru district. Here, a quiet crisis unfolds daily for the Shilakaitha fishing community. It's a struggle that lays bare how basic human dignities can tragically slip through the cracks in a modern society. Our mission in this deep dive is to truly unpack this compelling story. We want to understand not just what's happening, but why it persists, and crucially, what it means for all of us. We'll explore who the Shilakitha people are, the unimaginable ordeal they face in death, the bureaucratic hurdles that, well, perpetuate their plight, and the solutions that, on paper anyway, should already be in place. This isn't just a local story. It's really a window into broader societal challenges, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. To truly grasp the gravity here, we first need to understand who the Shilkikitha actually are. Their connection to the land and water goes back generations. It's deep.
What's so striking about them, and perhaps also so complex about their identity, is their history.
Exactly. The Shilakitha are officially classified as a scheduled caste in Karnataka. That's a term used for historically marginalized groups in India. Their roots are nomadic, which indicates a long history of moving across landscapes, following resources, adapting.
Nomadic, okay.
Yeah. And some historical accounts even link their name to drama artists in Marathi, hinting at this rich cultural heritage of storytelling, maybe performance. But their name also sort of emphasizes a deep connection to nature through fishing and other kinds of labor. It's this adaptive, flowing way of life that has allowed them to thrive for generations, really.
And for nearly 2 decades now, around 150 Shilakitha families have called Menasuru Ravuru Camp home. It's a makeshift settlement, right? Right near the Badra River's edge in our Tuluk.
That's right. A Tuluk being a smaller administrative division within the district. And their entire livelihood is completely tied to this water.
You see them casting nets at dawn, pulling in fish.
Exactly. Fish that not only feed their families, but supply local markets too. They are incredibly skilled, reading river currents, mending nets under starry skies. Truly, as you might say, the unsung guardians of Karnataka's waterways.
Unsung guardians, I like that.
And the Bhadra River itself, it originates in the Western Ghats mountain range, and it became this major fishing hub after a dam created vast backwaters back in the mid-20th century. These waters, just teeming with life, have supported hundreds of families, including the Shilakitha, for a long time now.
So it's this rhythm of existence, almost idyllic in its connection to nature, like you described. But this harmony just shatters when death visits. This is where it becomes profoundly heartbreaking, isn't it?
It really is, because for 2 decades, since settling there in the early 2000s, they have lacked a proper burial site.
2 decades.
Think about that. 2 decades without a dignified place to lay their loved ones to rest. I mean, this isn't just an inconvenience. It forces them into this harrowing and often perilous journey.
A journey. Where?
They rely on a small islet a few kilometers away, and it's only accessible by water.
Only by water. So you have to picture this. A family is mourning, perhaps an elder who spent their entire life on this very river. The body, wrapped in simple cloth, is carefully placed into a coracle.
Those incredible, lightweight, bowl-shaped boats, traditionally made from bamboo and hides. Very traditional craft.
Wow.
And then relatives must navigate the currents, oars dipping into the water, the boat rocking. It's this final, sorrowful voyage.
And if the weather turns...
If the winds pick up, yeah, it turns from just a somber journey into a truly perilous one. And this isn't hypothetical. We learned this ritual played out again just recently when an aged man from the community passed away.
Oh, wow.
So it's an ongoing reality.
Yeah, and even when they reach this islet, the struggle continues, battling nature's elements.
Exactly. We learned they dig pits in the sandy soil there. But during the monsoon season, from about June to September,
Right, when the rains are heavy.
water just seeps into the graves almost immediately. Their makeshift solution, and it's a desperate bid to keep the burial dry, involves lining the pits with leaves. Just leaves.
Lining them with leaves. trying to hold back the water.
It raises a huge question, doesn't it? In a society that prides itself on progress, how can such a basic human dignity be denied for so long? The emotional burden, the practical burden, turning grief into a perilous ordeal like this is immense, and it speaks to a deeper systemic issue, wouldn't you say, where communities like the Shilikitha are just invisible.
Invisible or maybe just not prioritized. It's a powerful point, and it leads us directly to the root causes. Why? Why does this situation persist year after year?
When we look closer, a pretty stark perception emerges, one that acts as a real barrier. It truly does. That nomadic label we touched on earlier, it becomes a serious problem for them in accessing basic rights. We found accounts, for instance, of a local leader justifying denying amenities by remarking that the Shilikitha are, quote, basically nomads and won't live in a particular place for long.
Wow. So that perception directly impacts policy or lack thereof.
Precisely. And this perception isn't unique to Rovuru camp. It echoes across Karnataka, where many nomadic and semi-nomadic groups face these systemic barriers to accessing essential services. It's a recurring theme.
And this leads directly to what you could call systemic neglect, and definitely ignored appeals.
Yes. Studies reveal a community grappling with low literacy rates, limited access to education, economic instability. They often rely on daily wages, making life precarious.
So they're already facing multiple disadvantages.
Exactly. And despite their repeated pleas for houses, for electricity, and crucially for a dignified burial ground, their appeals to the Gram Panchayat, that's the local village council responsible for basic amenities.
Right, the first point of contact.
And the Taluk administration, the next level up, and even their local member of legislative assembly, these appeals have consistently gone unaddressed, just ignored.
It sounds incredibly frustrating.
And it isn't an isolated incident, as we said. We've learned that across the state, in cities like Mysuru and other districts, similar grievances persist. Lack of basic facilities like toilets, housing, land for farming, caste certificates, electricity. These issues regularly get reviewed in high-level meetings, apparently, but often see no tangible action on the ground.
So meetings happen, reports are filed, but nothing changes for the people affected.
That's the crux of it. It's a systemic failure in the last mile of governance. Policies might exist, but they're rendered inert by these entrenched perceptions and, frankly, bureaucratic inertia. The spirit of the law becomes invisible to those it's meant to serve most.
It's that chasm, isn't it, between policy intent and what actually happens on the ground. It's so striking because, like you said, it's not as though there aren't provisions or intentions for situations exactly like this. When you actually look at the laws and government schemes in Karnataka, they seem designed to address precisely these gaps.
Absolutely. The framework, on paper at least, is surprisingly robust. For instance, the Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act of 1989, a really important piece of legislation.
Yes.
It actually mandates protections, including specific provisions for burial or cremation grounds in villages for these historically marginalized communities. It's written right there.
So the legal basis exists.
It does. And there are even contingency plans where district magistrates, the senior officials in the district, are tasked with allotting land for these purposes using existing government funds. The mechanism is supposed to be there.
And it goes further than that, right? We've seen more recent efforts mentioned too.
Yes, absolutely. In 2022, the state government specifically began acquiring land for separate Dalit graveyards in all Gram Panchayats, aiming explicitly to ensure dignity in death. Even earlier, by 2016, directives allowed the government to purchase private land if government plots weren't available for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities. So they acknowledged potential land scarcity.
And there's funding too.
Significant funding. Beyond those specific acts, there are broader welfare efforts. A substantial 10 crore grant that's about 1.2 million US dollars was allocated just in May 2025, specifically for developing nomadic communities. Plus, you have initiatives like the Tent-Free Karnataka program, launched to secure permanent land and housing. They even have awareness drives to highlight schemes like direct loans, self-employment aids, microcredit, and something called Ganga Kalyana, which is an irrigation scheme for farmers.
Okay, so the state has this whole toolkit: legal mandates, specific land acquisition plans, dedicated funding, development programs. It sounds comprehensive on paper.
It really does.
Yet the situation for the Shilikitha in Rovuru persists day after day. And it's not just them. We also learned that in Dumburmuthur village near Haveri district, other Shilakitha families have waited an astonishing 75 years for land rights.
75 years.
Can you imagine? And apparently this prompted instructions for land allocations from government reserves, instructions that clearly haven't fully delivered on their promise if they're still waiting.
It highlights this critical, tragic gap. The framework is there, the funding is allocated, the directives are written down. But the tangible impact on communities like the Shilakitha remains heartbreakingly absent. It really forces us to question how effectively these vital resources are actually reaching the people they're meant to serve. Where is the breakdown happening in that chain from policy to person?
It's the difference between a policy existing and a policy being enacted, being felt.
Precisely.
And as you mentioned, this isn't just an isolated incident, some kind of anomaly in one obscure corner of Karnataka. When we started connecting the dots, we discovered parallel struggles echoing across the state. It reveals this wider pattern of challenge. This really tells us that the Shilakitha's experience, while specific, isn't unique in its nature.
It absolutely isn't. We see broader challenges for fishing and nomadic communities right across Karnataka.
Yeah.
If you look at the coastal areas like Udupi and Dakshina Kannada districts, places known for their fishing,
Yeah.
here you have Coastal Regulation Zone, or CRZ, rules. Now, these are government regulations meant to protect ecologically sensitive coastal areas, which is important, of course.
Of course.
But they often unintentionally hinder access to basic housing and amenities for the fisherfolk living there. People report these infuriating delays in getting approvals for homes under government schemes like Matsya Shraya, that's a housing scheme specifically for fishermen.
While other projects might get approved faster.
Well, almost ironically, they observed that tourism projects sometimes seem to sail through the approval process with relative ease, while their own basic housing needs get bogged down.
So environmental protection, while vital, can inadvertently create new barriers for the very communities who live closest to that environment. What about further inland?
Inland, say in Shivamogga and other parts of Chikmagaluru district itself, surveys show fish farmers dealing with difficult socioeconomic profiles. Often small land holdings, extreme vulnerability to changes in water quality, things like pollution, overfishing, the impacts of dams on the Bhadra River, these directly threaten the fish diversity and therefore their livelihoods.
It's all interconnected.
Deeply. And we also see other nomadic tribes, like the Havugala people, also in Chikmagaluru, demanding permanent land after years of displacement. It's a similar struggle for recognition and basic rights.
And there's data backing this up more broadly.
Yes, even broader surveys, as recent as 2025, are actively measuring discrimination using detailed checklists. And one of the specific points they check for is the denial of burial grounds. This unequivocally reveals just how widespread these inequities truly are across the state. It really underscores the profound difficulty of integrating these communities into formal administrative structures without inadvertently eroding their traditional way of life, or, more critically, denying them their most basic human needs, like a place to bury their dead.
Ultimately, then, what we're talking about here isn't just policy papers or bureaucratic processes. It's about real people, real families. It's about the profound human cost of this prolonged struggle. The impact must reverberate far beyond the moment of grief itself.
It truly does. I mean, think about the future generations first. Without stable amenities, without a proper place to live, without that sense of permanence, education suffers tremendously. Children in these kinds of nomadic or semi-settled setups often miss school or struggle to keep up. This creates a tragic cycle of poverty that's incredibly hard to break out of.
So it's not just about today. It's about limiting the future for these kids.
Absolutely. It's about their potential, their opportunities. And then there are the immediate health risks, which are very real.
You mentioned the burials during the monsoon.
Exactly. Improper burials, especially in flood-prone areas like the river backwaters during the monsoon season, pose significant public health risks from water contamination. This affects the health of the living community downstream.
That's a serious concern.
And perhaps the hardest to quantify, but maybe the most significant, is the emotional burden. Just imagine the toll that takes. The act of having to ferry bodies across water, often in precarious conditions, turns the already crushing weight of grief into this terrible ordeal. It's like a final voyage no one ever wants to take.
It robs families of a peaceful goodbye, doesn't it? Of that solemn dignity that every human being deserves in death.
Completely. It strips away that final moment of peace. And overlaying all of this is the economic vulnerability we touched upon.
Right, the reliance on daily wages, seasonal work.
Precisely. Economic studies paint this picture of incredible resilience, yes, but resilience amidst real hardship. Consistently low incomes, heavy reliance on seasonal work, which is often unpredictable, and significant barriers to getting credit or loans. All of this makes it incredibly hard to break out of the cycle. While some urban fishing communities might manage to diversify their livelihoods, find other work, rural groups like the Shilakaitha often have far fewer options available to them. It just amplifies their vulnerability.
So this really is the core "so what" of our deep dive today, isn't it? This crisis erodes human dignity at every single level, socially, economically, physically, and perhaps most profoundly, emotionally.
It does, and it's such a stark reminder that when one community is left adrift like this, denied such fundamental rights, the entire fabric of society is ultimately weakened. We're all connected.
We've navigated the complexities of the Shilakitha's struggle today, from the really intimate, harrowing details of their riverine burials to the broader landscape of governmental policies and those persistent societal perceptions. It's truly a story of incredible resilience in the face of profound and what seems like largely avoidable hardship.
But it's not without hope. There are signs, small perhaps, but important. Community members continue to persist with petitions. They keep raising their voices, echoing calls from broader nomadic groups across the state for proper inclusion in reservation policies and development plans. They aren't giving up.
And there's been some political attention, too.
Yes, we've seen examples of political support, sometimes from major national parties backing protests or raising the issue. That kind of attention can amplify these vital voices and bring their plight more into the public eye, which is crucial.
And maybe there's even inspiration to be found in the river itself. You mentioned the Padra's environmental flows being managed.
That's a nice thought, actually. The very environmental flows in the Padra, which are managed to sustain downstream life and ecosystems, could perhaps inspire more integrated solutions that balance ecology and human needs. It's a kind of metaphor for what's possible if we think holistically about the land and its people.
Imagine that future.
Yeah. Imagine a future where these families have secure land. For homes, yes, but also for dignified burials, maybe near the river they cherish so much. With reliable electricity lighting their evenings, with schools properly nurturing their young. That vision, it's not just some distant dream. It really should be seen as a fundamental right that ought to be afforded to every single community.
So how do we get there?
Well, through targeted, actual implementation of the existing schemes we talked about. Through joint surveys involving the community to accurately identify their needs, not just make assumptions, and through truly empathetic governance that sees people, not just labels or statistics. Resolutions are absolutely within reach. It's about fostering a state where dignity truly extends beyond life's end for everyone.
So this deep dive leaves us, and hopefully you listening, with a powerful question to reflect on. What does it truly mean for a society to offer dignity in death? And perhaps more importantly, how do we as informed citizens ensure that this fundamental right reaches every single person, regardless of their history, their lifestyle, or their present circumstances, across every corner of our world?